So hi, I'm CJ Kirshner. I'm a senior narrative designer at Dambuster Studios.
First of all, what were your kind of key areas that you wanted to improve upon with Homefront: The Revolution that you felt were lacking in the first game?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish that Homefront: The Revolution is a new installment in the Homefront universe. It is not a direct sequel. It has almost no direct ties to the original game. And so really what that has allowed us to do is all manner of things. Take the game open world, reconceive the backstory, really rethink what it means to be a guerrilla fighter in an occupied America, and how you conduct your operations. So rather than following a scripted linear path, you're dropped into a sandbox, given the tools, and told to make the best with what you got.
So you got an entirely new timeline. Have you cherry-picked any events from the previous game? Because I remember it's quite a famous thing that it managed to predict the death of Kim Jong-il, wasn't it? So that was kind of crazy. Have you kept that bit?
I'm not going to go into too much detail about the new timeline yet. We'll be talking more about it. But that was, boy, that was a shocking moment when that proved to be. I don't even know how to respond. Too prescient for our own good, I think.
So, I mean, is it a different aesthetic then as well? I mean, completely different kind of look to the game and feel?
Well, I think that if you're asking about the sort of art direction, I think it will feel very familiar to people who played the original game. I think starting from that premise of, an economically crippled America occupied by a foreign military power, I won't say that it's a direct, translation, but obviously the end result seems very similar in terms of the, empty suburbias, the sort of bombed out condos, but there are a lot of very large and small differences between the two. And again, I think you'll see more of those as we reveal more of the game in the coming weeks and months.
Was it a challenge to take such a linear game and kind of throw it out in every direction, go open world with it? Is that kind of tough? I mean, did it start out as a linear game as an idea, and did it gradually develop, or was it always?
So when the game began life under THQ, it was intended to be a direct sequel, and it was going to continue that sort of linear style of gameplay. And then once Dambuster got a hold of it, they thought, well, given the story we want to tell, given the types of gameplay that we want to feature, and given the setting, doesn't it make more sense to take it open world? I mean, it was the right thing to do. In terms of challenges, obviously developing an open world with so many systems in play, with a lot of dynamic variables, whether that's weather, whether that's AI interactions, obviously presents an enormous set of challenges, but also, I think, an incredible set of opportunities in that where previously the player would have been very, very restricted in their freedoms, to duck down an alley or dive into a sewer, or the ridiculous example that I like to give is drive a motorbike up a flight of stairs onto a roof. That's something that we can now allow, and I think that's fantastic.
Playing the game, obviously it's an open world, you're completing a lot of different activities. It felt very Far Cry. You're doing different things, but it kind of reminded me of that. Is it a direct influence at all?
I think that Homefront: The Revolution definitely shares DNA with a lot of other games in the genre, and I think it's impossible, we play them all ourselves, not to be influenced, and I'm sure there are other games that were influenced by the original Homefront or maybe influenced by this one. In terms of direct inspiration, I can't say one way or another, but I think that when you set out to make an open world shooter, there are certain things that you want as a player and as a developer, and often those two things end up in very similar places.
Right. Is this the first game that's been built, an open world game, with the Crytek engine? And if so, how adaptable has the engine been to an open world?
No, I don't know too much about the technology other than that we are running on CryEngine, that we got a lot of technological benefits, a lot of very high fidelity rendering, and that we've built a lot of our own tech on top of that. In terms of, if there are very, very technical specifications for, why CryEngine was chosen over another, I can't say, but I will say, no, CryEngine, I think, has a proven track record, certainly in Crytek's games, and I think in ours as well, of being capable of handling these big spaces with lots going on in them, and lots of independent actors within them.
They touched on crafting in the presentation just now. Could you tell us a little bit more about the crafting system and how that works?
Well, the crafting system is not terribly complicated at the moment. It may change over the course of development. We're still iterating and tweaking everything. But basically you have a Guerrilla toolkit. So when you bring up your weapon menu, you'll see 4 items at the bottom in addition to all of the weapons that you're carrying. You have your incendiary devices, which are things like Molotovs. You have your explosive devices. They do explode. Like pipe bombs. You have distraction devices, which is basically just a fistful of firecrackers. And then you have the hacking devices, which looks like a router antenna stuck on a PVC pipe full of other electronic gizmos. And so throughout the course of your playing, you'll be using these to distract patrols, or to hack enemy drones, or to simply just cause chaos and mayhem, or create an opening for you and your fire team to get away. And additionally, you'll find things like lockers and desk drawers and just the sort of things that people leave behind when they abandon an area. And if you rifle through them, you'll find bits and pieces of ingredients that then you can slap together to replenish the items in that kit. And in addition to the 4 archetypes of the incendiaries and whatnot, we also have 4 different deployment methods. So there's the thrown weapons, which is just like throwing a glass bottle full of petrol and a lit rag. But we also have remote detonation, so you can place it on a wall or on a vehicle or really anywhere that you could think to throw a sticky explosive, and then go back a certain distance, phone it up, and have it detonate. We have proximity-based Guerrilla toolkit items, and then we have the remote control car, which you can use to sort of drive it onto its target. And the interesting thing is you can take any 4 of those first types and combine them with any 4 of the second types. So if you want to, you can take firecrackers and stick them on the back of an RC car and then just drive that around.
You've got 3 zones in the game as well. So you've got the green zone, the yellow zone, the red zone. We just played the red zone.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the yellow and the green zones and how they differ to the red?
So we're not talking too much yet about the yellow and green zones, but I can say that the red zone is definitely our most lawless. So it's probably got the most outright combat. You'll get into the most running street battles in your red zones. The yellow zones are where people live, and the occupation, rather than being sort of on the streets with guns and vehicles, is more the drone scans and surveillance cameras and propaganda loudspeakers. And then the green zones are the historic landmarks of Philadelphia, like Independence Hall, and they're very, very tightly controlled. You're going to see a lot of checkpoints. The areas are all very clean, but it's an incredibly high security presence.
How about multiplayer? Because that was a fairly big part of the first game. Is that coming back for the Revolution?
So we've announced that we're doing a 4-player cooperative multiplayer mode, and we'll be revealing more details about that again in the coming weeks and months. But we've got an exclusive beta coming to Xbox One that we announced yesterday, and that should be coming this winter. It's going to be exciting.
Cool. One more question. In the first Homefront, you had some fairly shocking, quite memorable scenes. I mean, are you going to try and have that sort of drama, those kind of dramatic story beats in there in this one?
In terms of the level of brutality on display, I don't know that Homefront: The Revolution is going to approach quite that level. But what we do have is a more sort of, I don't have a great, I'm gonna need to think of a catchy way to say this, but like, it's sort of an omnipresent kind of pressure, whether that's, again, in the red zones from like a fighting presence or in the yellow zones from like a surveillance presence. But there's sort of a downtroddenness to the world. It feels, you know, less like the shocking scenes in Children of Men and more like the sort of dreary scenes that would also be reminiscent of something like George Orwell's 1984.
I was going to say it's described as Orwellian in the presentation, and that really comes
I think
across.
that's a fair assessment of it. But we'll see what's in the final game.
We have awoken from our wasteful sleep and taken responsibility for our future. We have renewed pride in our work. We are once again enterprising, resourceful, and cooperative. Thanks to you, we have rediscovered who we are. And there's no turning back to our apathetic and misguided ways. A new day has dawned, and a brighter future beckons. And for this, we say, thank you.
So Homefront: The Revolution will be out early 2016 for PC, Mac, Linux, Xbox One, and PS4.